welcome to my weekly video blog, and this week there are several important announcements. The first one is that we have started our fall holiday of 2013. Yes, I now have 2 weeks off. During those 2 weeks there's going to be an emphasis on Project Springboard. Weather permitting, there will be some more trips to the ends of the earth, and it looks like we might have an away day at one point, but that's not yet sort of sorted out, so let's have a look at that. The other important announcement is that I've decided what I'm going to do with the majority of the windfall money. I am launching my 5th tour abroad. The first tour I did was to the Peloponnese in Greece. The second tour was a trip around sort of Northern Europe, where I did France, Germany, Switzerland, sort of Belgium, that area. And then of course there were the 2 trips, the 2 American Dreams tours to the US, where I took in about sort of 10 or 11 states in total. Now I am thinking of doing a Roman tour. Yes, I want to go and visit the Eternal City and have a look around Rome and the Vatican. It's likely to be a shorter tour than the American Dreams tour. It's likely to only be about a week, and I'm looking at doing it in the vernal holidays of 2014, so March next year, probably. We haven't sorted it out, but that is what we are thinking. So that's good. You will have noticed that there's been some commotion as well in the UK recently about an impending storm, which was sort of a bit of an Atlantic hurricane. Now that was due to hit yesterday evening, and it was quite funny because it was very windy and wet yesterday afternoon, and then it dropped. It went really quiet at about 9 o'clock in the evening, and it was still quiet at 12, and as far as I know it certainly never hit here. Well, so there we are. Panic over, despite the fact that I bought in all my quails and some of the recycling tubs and all the bird feeders that were hanging on my wall. I brought them all in just in case, because we were expecting gale force winds between 80 and 100 miles an hour. So, but I don't think it ever happened. You will also notice that this week is a living and learning blog, and that's because it's the point at which we passed the 10 years of my confirmation. Now, like a lot of people who were brought up Christian, I was baptised as an infant, which isn't specifically biblical, because the thing about baptism is that it's supposed to be a profession of faith. You're supposed to be able to choose whether you want to be a Christian or not, and you can't choose obviously as a sort of a 16-month-old baby or whatever it is. So it's the parents that decide for you there. In most churches that just counts as baptism, that's what it is. But in the Anglican Church they recognise that point, and above 13 you can, if you're not Christian, if you haven't been brought up Christian and haven't had a child infant baptism, you can get an adult baptism. If you have had an infant baptism, you can do what's called a confirmation, which is a profession of faith, and you know it's got the oils, but it doesn't use submersion in water. These are this is a rite of passage which is included in most churches as being a sacrament, which is one of the sort of sacred rites. The interesting thing about a sacred rite is it's a human invocation that's designed to create something very special spiritually, but is a little bit like the moon reflecting the sun's light. The moon itself doesn't have the light, and so it reflects the sun's light. It has no control over that light, and the only reason you can see it from Earth is because of the sun. The church is a little bit the same. It doesn't actually have spiritual control over these sacraments at all. It can invoke to its heart's content, but it doesn't always mean that just because you've been through a ceremony, you've had something spiritual happen. To be honest with you, there was not anything spiritual about my confirmation, except perhaps that it took place at one of the darkest points of my annus horribilis, which is interesting, but it's not specifically sacred, which is probably why I haven't really celebrated it or mentioned it in the past 10 years. But since we are passing a decade point, I thought I would. For me, the moment of baptism came a little bit earlier. It came on New Life Day, during my annus mirabilis, which is my great year, in 1998. And I've spoken about that every single year, because that's when the spiritual aspect of what was going on at confirmation actually happened. So many, many years before, in fact. And that's why it's important not to dwell so much on being a card-carrying member of the church that you're part of, but to remember that it's not about the infant baptism, the water baptism, or the confirmation. It's about the spiritual baptism, and that happens when God wants it to happen, no matter how much the church may try and invoke it at different times. Having said that, my confirmation is special for a number of reasons. It happened, of course, in St Paul's Cathedral in the choir with the Lord Bishop of London, because he was the jurisdiction that I was under at the time. And it was important because my family visited St Paul's. It was the only time in my 2 years there that they entered the building. They did enter in 2005, but I'd already left at that point. So that's quite special. It's something that I have fond memories of, and it's something religious, but it's not something for me that was terribly spiritual. I was asked if I wanted, during my you had a few training sessions, sort of talking over what confirmation was all about with some of the clergy there, and I was asked if I wanted to choose a patron saint, because sometimes they said, well, Christ can be quite a hard role model to follow, and it might be nice to have sort of somebody that you look up to who is 100% human. I, of course, was a bit mean in that respect, and I decided that if I was allowed to choose any saint, it would be St Michael. Of course, they told me that I couldn't have that for obvious reasons, because St Michael is a canonised saint, yes, but also an archangel, and so it defeats the whole object. But I thought the whole object was a little bit stupid, so I was making a point there. And that really is it for my blog this week. I'm looking forward to my holidays now, and I'm going to relax and just take it easy.